It's not.
Okay, you're
It's
good.
going.
We good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. This is the end of our sprint week 29. Okay, so that's about approximately 58 weeks of coding. We had a 3 week and a 2 week, but that's approximately what we're talking about, which is over a year. In development this last week, we had grant management, which is about completed. We worked on activity log, case notes, career plan, customer profile, upgrades in the customer record, which is all called customer profile now. Pre-screening, we had some fixes, getting ready for today, which we're going to go through that UAT today. We have some upgrades to training program, which hopefully we'll get into UAT next week. And then we're continuing to work on our user roles, user login, Okta integration, security work, all that authorization, authentication work. We continue to do data migration in small bits and pieces, but that'll probably step up pretty quick here because we need to get some data in here. Lots of discovery going on. Hopefully, some of you are probably a part of that. Some of us, but discovery process, building out the requirement documents, story development, those kinds of things, applications assessments, career plan, services, exits, and outcomes. Those are the big hitters right now, and hopefully we'll get through those pretty soon. So any questions on where we're currently at in our development cycles and our requirement build outs? See if I can pull chat up here, get it up above so I can catch any questions you might have. Okay. So today we were going to walk you through this ETPL onboarding process, which is called the ETPL Pre-Screening. And we will be sending you out links to the document, this document here, the note page. Actually, I do got to get back into the note page, but we'll send you out links to that. That will be more, it'll be a little bit different this time. It'll be in a more public place for you to be able to get to. It'll be accessible off of the project site this time. So we'll get that to everyone after the meeting. And so this is the normal standard guide format that you've seen. We're in release, we're calling this release 3. We'll have 2 cycles of this. We'll have the pre-screening, ETPL pre-screening cycle, then we'll have the training program development cycle also in this release. As always, here this document starts out with the instructions on how we go through the UAT process. This date looks like it's wrong, and I apologize. Release will be deployed. It's deployed already into the UAT environment. It's available now, which would be the 17th. There's no security constraints right now, so when I show you how to get to that, you will not have to log in. You will just go straight to the pre-screening step and start working through that. And the whole purpose of release number 3 is to review. Looked at this like 5 times, and I'm still not catching some of these proofing problems. So the purpose of release 3 is to review the ETPL training program. I know what the problem is. I've got the wrong one up. Hold on, folks. No, this is right. Okay. Yeah, okay, we're good. Homework areas for this week, the UAT task will focus on that pre-screening. We have an email verification part that you will only have to do. You should only do that probably once so you can see how that works. And you can give us feedback on if that's understandable and all that, because you got to really think this time from a person's perspective that's going to use this basically from the outside world, right? They're not going to be a logged in user when they start to use this. They'll get to this page through a landing page that's being developed, um, that will give them a lot of information about becoming an ETPL provider. And then they'll walk through this pre-screening program so we can make sure that they understand and are the right fit as a provider for pre-screening. Okay. You'll be able to complete all pre-screening pages. Well, I'll show you how to do that several times because depending upon your actions, you'll go on a different path. So depending upon what type of provider you are, if you're in state, out of state, those kinds of things, you'll have different questions to answer, different documents to upload. Um, I think a lot of you have seen this in the mock-up stuff, but now you're going to get to play with it. Okay. I'd like to get I'd like to get back your feedback by the 22nd, which is next Tuesday. Um, if we take a little longer, that's okay, but I'd like to get your feedback into the notes. At least if you see some issues, we would certainly like to get those in soon. If you're kind of all right with it, you don't have to worry about that. Okay, there's a link in here to access the UAT environment. So this document will give you everything you need. There's also a link in here to access the reporting notebook. Remember, when you're logging your entries, you should log them according to what page you're on and according to any problems, issues, those kinds of things. If you have anything, access problems, one notebook problems, document problems, UAT link problems, anything you have a problem with to, to complete this process, please contact one of us. There's Taylor, Libby, Lynette, myself. Any of us will help you. And there's an email address in here. Please test thoroughly. Work, put your mindset in as a new provider, that you're a new provider and you want to get into this ETPL program. You want your programs listed. Now, if just to let everybody understand this, if I'm already a provider that's in the system and has training programs from the past, and all I want is to create a new training program profile, or I want to update one that I'm in, you do not go through this process. This is for uh, new providers that want to get into that want to be listed on the ETPL. Okay. Make sure when you put in that information into the note of something you find that you're either not satisfied with or that's actually a problem, like an error or defect or something like that, you give us all the steps you have as precisely as possible on how to reproduce the issue. If you can grab a screenshot, awesome. Recordings, even better. Uh, if you could mention what browser um, and or device you're using during testing. What do we mean by that? Well, are you using Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Safari, and are you using a PC, laptop, your phone, or a tablet? So we'd like to know those things. And then list what you expected to happen versus what actually happened. So that's what we say, expected versus actual. How we will categorize these, you don't have to worry too much about these, but when we put feedback into that notebook, they're either bugs, you could even, put that you think it's a bug, that's okay, but we'll make sure we dig in and reproduce this. It's either a bug, an issue, or enhancement. A bug is basically when the system doesn't perform as expected. It's not performing according to the requirements. So when we say, actually, you can even look without even digging into a requirements document or getting a requirements document, you can dig into that guide because that guide is built off the requirements, and you can say, oh, well, it says that this is how it works, this guide right here, and it's not working that way. That's pretty much a bug. Issues is the system is performing like the requirements, but now that you see it, it's in your hands, you're using it, then you basically kind of are like, why did we do that? Why are we requiring it that way? So that's really an issue that we can deal with. Um, and we can decide if there's a better way or whatever. The third one is actually a true enhancement. Well, it'd be nice if this was a different user interface, a drop down or a checkbox, and an open edit field. It would be nice if we collected more data, whatever that is, that will come into the enhancement categories, and those can be also looked at in terms of priority with change requests and those kinds of things. So those are kind of the three areas we will classify those into. We'll actually tell you in that note. We give you feedback. If it's an issue or bug, we normally will put a number in there, which will track that back to our tracking program, to our DevOps. But we'll tell you what that is, if you don't have to worry about figuring that out. Think like the end user. Like I said, it's probably one of the only parts right now, but this is outside of the everyday user that's logged in. The end of this process with success will lead them to getting their ID and then starting to log in, and complete the process, complete the training program, and all those kinds of things. But at this stage, this pre-screening stage, they're not actually a user. So think about that, because is the language clear? Those kinds of things. Be specific and thorough. The more specific your feedback can be, the easier it will be for us to address that. And like we said, include all the steps and outcomes and results. Provide context. It's good to provide context. Why, especially on enhancements, why would that improve the user experience? Maybe it's something you bring from another platform, or just maybe it's like, I just don't know why this is hard to understand, but if I don't understand it, then I'm certain that somebody off the street's not going to understand it. So this will be available for you to read through again, and we appreciate your help on this. Getting this into your hands during the build out process, this is big for us, because each time we give you a UAT cycle and it gets into your hands and we get feedback, then we are building a system that's better for you and everybody you serve, and not just building a system in a black box. Okay, I'm going to walk through this, but we are going to see it in a demo. But I do want to walk through this document page by page, so you understand the relationship between the UAT guide and the actual system. But you're going to get to see both. So there's basically, what I want to say is there's basically 4 pages. I know there's going to be a lot of pages in there. We'll call them pages, but there's 4 screens, you may call them, but there's 4 different steps in this pre-screening process. The 4th step is different according to what you answered to on the first or the second step. So the first step is we're trying to tie this particular user to a provider, and it may not be the ending provider name that we get that's very specific from them when they create their provider record, but it's the one that they're dealing with, which will help us, all of us together, to understand what provider they're dealing with, the provider that they're a user, that they're trying to enter. Okay. Now, this next part is identification. This drops down. It allows you to have FEIN or Rapids ID, and then it puts it format here so you can type that in. Why is that important? Well, we don't want to really do pre-screening and collect pre-screening data on providers that are already in the system. So obviously that's unique, the identification number. Excuse me. And so if they type in, if somebody comes in and says, I'm going to, get our provider on the list, they could already be on the list. Maybe they didn't search before they came in, or maybe they just weren't aware of it. They thought, well, we're not on this, or maybe they're associated, some of these providers are big, right? Maybe they're associated with a different location. Maybe they're associated with a different program, and that program has not been on there, and they didn't know that other programs were there. Whatever that reason is, we want to try to eliminate collecting pre-screening data on providers that we already have in the system. A contact email address is very important because this particular page, once it's filled out successfully, once we have found that there's no duplicates, it's not a duplicate, then we will send them an email and they will give them a link and what we call a token, which is a long string that's embedded into that link, and it brings them back to page 2. That could be the minute they get done with page 1, this first step. They could go over to their email and come back in, which we'd hope that would be the case. It could be tomorrow. It could be the next day. So it could be anytime. It could be hours later. But what they'll get is an email that looks like this, which is we all ETPL verification. And there's a link here that they select, which will return them into that, what we call step 2. Okay. Step 2 is provider description. There's a provider description area here, which has got to be about the training provider and accreditation and specific programs. And then there are 4 choices on this page that best describes the provider. And the first choice is it's a college or university and programs. The second one, organization operates programs. We'll look at this a little closer when we get into the actual system. The third choice is the CBO, FBO, faith-based and community-based, and then labor management. And the fourth one says, I don't have any, mine, these 3 don't describe me as a provider. Okay, which when you select this, it'll basically say, well, you need to really contact DCO's ETPL coordinator because, and we'll provide an email address, but because it should be one of these 3 types of providers. When you select one of these, they will expand for a few other questions. Okay, this describes that page. If you pick the first one, it will expand into, is the institution is public or private, the institution higher education primary awards, and these different degrees. And this is primarily, and we will potentially be changing that a little bit. But the main thing right now to know is even if you offer more than one of those, this is the primary. So that's what that looks like when you select this. And if you put in the description and select this and select one of these or both of these answers for both of these questions and hit the next, you'll be able to go forward. If you select the register apprenticeship area, then you're going to get a public or private question. That's all you're going to get. And you can go forward. And the third answer, if you select the joint labor management, CBOs, FBOs, then you're going to get at first 2 questions. One is the institution is private, public. The other one is it's community-based, it's joint labor, or it's adult ed, or adult literacy activities. If you select that third one, you're going to get another, I don't have a page for that, but if you selected the third one, you're going to get a couple other questions. I don't know why I don't have a screen print for that, but we'll go through that. The second step, the fourth answer will just tell you you can't go forward. Any of those situations, you got to fill this page out or it'll tell you, hey, you're not completely finished filling that page out. Okay, the second step is location. We can have in-state or it's out-of-state virtual learning, e-learning, whatever you want to call that. So if you answer it's in-state, then you're done and you can go forward. If you answer that it's out-of-state or virtual, then there are a couple other questions on there, which are you listed on another state's ETPL, which if you hit that yes, you'll be able to select it. Do you have proof that it's authorized in that state you chose, yes or no? You'll be able to upload that proof. Does the provider have evidence that It doesn't offer instruction to core academic services like admissions, evaluation, all that, or operate any physical location in Illinois. So it's just one more question on, are you sure you're out of state? When you expand that first one, you can select the state. The second one, you can upload. And the third one, documentation there to upload. We'll show you how those uploads work when we get into that. If we selected the first answer on the first page, on our second step there, then we're going to get into a screen that's either public or private that has for higher education. And there's a couple questions on this one. When you hit those, it'll expand. The yes will expand and allow you to upload for both of those. And then, excuse me. And then you can select the agency in one of those questions that you're accredited through. Private is just a little bit different, but it's pretty much the same. Higher education. The third. Then you get into, if you would have selected answer number 2, which was the registered apprenticeship program, you would have had these 2 questions. Okay, we'll see those. And that's why I'm saying you can take different paths. So when you're doing your user testing, you can take different paths, and I'll show you how to do that. And these are the expansions on those that you should see for the registered apprenticeship page. There's the private side. There's a public and private. There's questions are a little bit different on the private than the public. And it explains that. Community-based or labor management organization, that's selection 3 on that second step. If you pick that, then you'll have a different set of questions on the 4th page. There's only 4 different steps: the collection of the email, the type of provider, in-state, out-of-state, and then more questions on which type of, depending on which type of provider. Even though I have all these listed, those are different paths. So you have 4 choices on the front. So it breaks it down as you go. So we don't throw the questions in front of you or ask you questions that you don't need to be asked. And then it describes what you should see on those. So if there's something different between what we're saying is here and what you're seeing on the screen, of course, that's an issue. The last page, this is the page you get now. It will not look like this exactly. We're trying to get integrated with what we call, Okta, which is getting your account and then giving you links and emails and all that to get your account to get logged back into the application as a validated user. Okay, so when you get through the pre-screening process, then it allows you to self-serve yourself to get to the state and get yourself an ID that gets you access into there. When you do get access into there, you're only going to have access to your data. You're not going to have access to anything else, but we want to get that process done also. And so that's that last page there. So let's go look at the system. And before we start with the system here, are there questions on like purpose or yeah, Laura, they got in this morning, but they're not in, we haven't moved it to UAT yet. They're actually, Laura had Whitney gave us some changes on ICB. You're correct. Those will be in UAT today. They're actually still in our test. They got put in this morning. I'll point those out to you where those are. Okay. So this is the current. It's not going to be the final or anything like this, but this is our current landing page, and you've been into UAT, and you do not have to log in here. But if you go over here, this management, we put, and this will not, just let me tell you again, this will not be launched from this look and feel for someone that's going to go through the pre-screening. They'll get to a landing page that talks all about ETPL, gives them all kinds of reference data and all those kinds of things, and also gives them ability to search the ETPL, and then it'll give them a link to get to this page. Okay, so this is kind of where this UAT starts right here. Let me go ahead and show you that again. What I did was I went to ETPL page 1. Don't even worry about the fact that we have all the pages here. Just go to page 1. Okay. All right. So the first thing I'm going to type in is if I was coming into this and I said, okay, um, uh, I would put in my provider name. I would either select FEI and Rapids. We're not really using SSN. We need to get that out of there. We do have some SSNs from the past that we got to deal with, and we got to think through that. But it'll only show them FEI and Rapids is all that'll show them. If you hit FEIN, it formats it the way it should be. If you hit Rapids, it'll format it differently. The way we understand Rapids right now is it's just 12, I believe it's 12 straight digits. If we do the FEIN, which everybody knows there's 2 digits in front and then there's 7 digits here. So if you would by chance type in something that is, hopefully I can do this. I'm assuming that's one of our test IDs, and hopefully this will show you what happens when I do that. So I'm going to put in just any name, and I'm going to put in here at fakemail.com. If you use this, and I'll get this back, I don't actually have this in the training guide. If you use anything at fakemail.com, our system will let you drive through without sending an email out. Why is that important? Because if you use your name once, if you use your name, your real email address, which you should do the first time, you should use your email. Like if I use al.menke@siu.edu, you'll get that email, and I'm going to do that in a second here. But what that email is tied to is the record that you had already started. So if you want to not have the second, third, and fourth, and fifth time, you don't want to have the data that's there that you left the last time. You want to see it clean. Then you'll want to put something in fake mail, and I'll show you that. Okay. Then if I go next, so that wasn't actually a duplicate. So I'll have to probably pull a duplicate here in a minute, but you'll get what you'll get here is the duplicate. This particular provider is already, in the pre-screening process, and it'll actually give you the provider name and a contact for that provider. So, or so then I get to here. So as you see, I just went through that. Let me go back through this one more time, just so you get a better feel for it. If I just put in, um, if I, let me go ahead and put a Rapids in there so you can see how that works. Okay. Now, if I put Al Menke at siu.edu, it will say you will receive an email at that address entered. Please look for that email and follow the link to continue this process. Okay. So we should get that email here in a brief second. I should see a thing here. Email. Let me find here we go. All right. So here's the email. Sorry about all that window stuff. I just received, which is the one you saw in that picture. And if I hit this link, It should take me back in. Does I got a different browser screen up, so let me pull that down. It took me back in and got me to this second page. Okay. Do that, make sure it works, but you don't, after you do that, you might not want to do it again because these fields could be already filled in because we save the data. You could actually go to that email as a user, go into this link, go in and fill out some of this information, get distracted, leave, do something else, and say, wow, I forgot I didn't finish that. Go back to that email, hit that link, and it'll take you back into your record. It's not a new record. So, and that's important because people may get distracted or taken away or whatever, and then they hit that link again. We want to take them back to their record, not create a new one. Okay. I'm going to look at before I go on, there is a, a couple uh, notes in the chat here. First one, I may jump ahead of this question. The training providers who have access to IWDS to update their training programs, they will be notified of these changes. They will not have to go through pre-screening. Their data will be migrated into the system, and they'll be able to, just kind of like they do today, they go to a link. Well, on that landing page, we'll also have users that are returning into the system, providers who are returning the system will have a link there that gets them in, kind of like a little bit like today. Like when you go in today, I think there's like a little landing page that says, I want to become a provider, or I'm already a provider and I want to link it. And it's not quite that language, but I want to get into my account. There'll be a link for that too, still, for them to get back into their account. They won't have to go through pre-screening. The only folks that go through pre-screening are the ones that haven't been in yet. LES 7 is currently using a fillable PDF application for pre-screen. Are you saying that you will be using this platform? Yes, we are. Okay, so you'll see that coming up in the next UAT where they actually create their training program, which is why you're saying. So before, right, when they said, I want to be listed on your ETPL, it actually gave them a contact, I think, information, and then they went and contacted that LWIA, and you guys sent them a PDF to fill out. Pretty much everybody did that. That wasn't just you. And then they sent that PDF in, and then someone, and this is the way I understand it, someone in the LWIA actually entered that data and entered that new provider, if it was a new provider, and entered all the training program data. They will be able to do this all themselves. Okay. Now understand that's all pending, so to speak, like even the creation of their provider record and all that until it goes through a review process. Okay. If the system says, oh, this is this would be a provider that has programs that are in LWIA 7's, what I would call territory, or that would fall under LWIA 7. Then when the LWIA 7 ETPL coordinator, whoever that's going to be designated that role, goes into the list of ready for review records, they will see their records that get put in there. They'll start going through there. They may still need to work with that provider if there's something wrong with that application or anything like that. But then they'll do a recommendation, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but they'll do a recommendation, then they'll select a status on that and either recommend that to be approved or not recommended to be approved. Okay. That will go to the state DCO's state ETPL coordinator. They'll do a review process. They may, obviously, they could contact and talk to the LWIA coordinator. They could explain, anything that needs to be explained. Now, if it is an online program or a virtual, learning or e-learning program out of state, those concepts, those records will go directly to DCO, ETPL coordinator for review. Hope that answers that question. Okay. And you'll get to see all that in our next, the training program build out, the screens for all that. You'll get to see that process in our next cycle of UAT. Okay, so here's that first page. Um, this will we're gonna amp this up a little bit too. I believe we can, which is going to get rid of some of our issues when we do reporting. But this is not going to allow you in the future to just put in a couple characters or put in whatever you want. But I am doing that um, right now just to get through this. So but that's specifically, we're going to try to anyway, specifically use some of the edits that are being edited against the data that we send for reporting, so that if we can get that stuff a little bit better, then we won't get those records kicked out when we report. Okay. Which of the following, so that's a required field. Which of the following four choices best describes your provider? Okay. The first choice is a college university that offers programs leading to officially recognized qualifications, such as industry recognized certificate, state or federal license, or an associate or bachelor's degree. Those, all your colleges, all your universities, all that fall into that first one. Select that in a second, and we'll go down that path. The second question is the organization that operates programs registered under the National Apprenticeship Act and approved by the U.S. Department of Labor, USDOL, Office of Apprenticeship. You select that one, you're going to have a private and public answer, and then you're going to go on. The third one is other public or private providers of training services, including community-based organizations, joint labor management organizations, and providers of adult education and literacy activities under Title II of WIOA if such activities are combined with training services described under WIOA Title I. Okay, that's your third choice. So it has to be one of those three choices. If it's the fourth choice, there will be an email link here, but I'm going to just go ahead and select that, which basically says, hey, you're going to have to contact the state ETPL coordinator for more information on becoming an eligible training provider under the WIOA Act. So, and we're going to give an email link there and allow them to go right straight from there. All right. So if I select number one, okay, let me just keep bouncing over here. Crystal. Um, Since the pre-screening, this is submitting the actual program records, so the specific programs offered is a description box supposed to be comprehensive. Yeah, this description box is comprehensive to the provider. Most of the pre-screening, almost all the pre-screening information that's collected here is really about that provider. Okay, I know what you're saying. The description of the training program itself, that's at a different location, and it's even more specific to, it's more specific to the training program that we're on. Yes, very, very much so. You hit it. Okay. We ask
Al,
you,
there
go
was
ahead.
one other question. I don't know if you got it. It was up above from Rory about,
I didn't get that. My fault. Let me see here. I'm scrolling up now. Oh, yeah, I see Rory's. Okay, sorry. Could you go over again? Oh yeah, sure, I will. I will go over that again, or about the different email addresses. You can use a different email address if you want to, if you got two or three, if you want to see that link again, but you do not have to. You can use any prefix. When I say prefix, anything before the at sign, and fakemail.com, fakemail.com. I'll put that in that document. Um, they've added that for us developers so that we can test this without having to go round trip through email. Um, let me see what else you got in here. For example, if rep school starts this process and uses their email address, and then another rep from the school needs to choose to go into the system, complete the ad. Okay. So the record that they create, the pre-screening data they create, is tied to one identification number, provider identification number, and one email. If someone else went in with a different email, we would be collecting different pre-screening data. Okay, we don't like. There's really not we really haven't addressed an opportunity for somebody to pass that off in the pre-screening process, especially because there's only a few questions. You want to say more about that, Rory? Because
No, that answered it. And and sorry, I keep forgetting as well that I have to keep reminding myself this is just for like the pre-screening
yes,
part. I think part of me is like thinking ahead
yeah,
to
you are. Yeah,
once they become an existing provider with program, at least one program that's been approved, then it's like when they log in, they might each get their own username. But again, just going back to the issue of trying to mitigate the possibility of duplications. Um,
exactly.
it's is a will the FEIN be the FEIN be like the Rapids if it's an apprenticeship program? Will there be like that one unique identifier that
Yes.
regardless of who's logging in, it'll be tied. That's the
Yes.
way they
So
can access their
exactly.
programs,
So
their profile stuff. So I think I get it.
exactly. When they come back, so that doesn't mean that just because one person is getting them through the pre-screening process, and let's remember, like you said, this is brand new. They're not on there yet, right? They're not, it's not a situation where that provider is already on there, our system, and they're adding a new training program. This is a situation where they've never been on Illinois' training, Illinois isn't possessive or whatever, ETPL, right? So later, when once that first person gets through, there's going to be two ways to add any other people to access that account. Okay, that provider record and all that. And there's going to be two ways. One is the original person that creates the record and all that is going to be able to request that, and then for somebody else to access, and then like we kind of did before, but that was done by the LWIA with the checkbox, and then the other one would be if someone requests access, I guess would be the other way, and we'll have to think through that. But they'll only be dealing with one provider record, one or more locations, one or more contacts, and one or more programs all tied to that provider record in the future. It's just this is getting them through to say, are you really sure, basically, right? Are you really sure that you're in the right place, that you have a program that fits this criteria, and try to get, you know, a little less burden on folks at the LWIAs, the locals and all that to worry about that screening process. So this is kind of a self-serve process. Okay.
Thanks.
Did I get it all, Olivia? I don't know if I got it all. I think that might have it all now.
Yeah, I
For,
think so. Yep.
for now. Here's yeah, FEIN unique identifier, yes. So it has to be unique right now, today, this is checking on that first page, this is checking the rest of the FEINs or rapid IDs that are in our test. There's not much in our test database, by the way. In our test database, in the future, that will also go against the pre-screening data too. It's not today yet, but it will. So we don't want anybody to restart a record, somebody else to start a record either that's not through the pre-screening process. Okay, let's hit public here. We're going to hit, and this is going to change a little bit, like I said, but we'll worry about that in the future. Let's hit bachelor's degree or higher. Okay, I've got the description in, I've got that. I've answered this first question, and then I'm going to hit next. All right, the next question is, where's your location? The first time we're going to go through this easy, and we're going to say the provider or its training site is in Illinois. Okay, in state. This would actually route that to the LWIA once we figure out what their location is. Okay. And then this step, which is our last step, is these specific questions are on public higher education. This statement here on the Illinois Community College, that's out of our testing system already. This will be today or tomorrow, this will be changed and this will be out. Up here, this question is reformed. This whole thing here is reformatted a little bit. This language right here is also, but basically it's asking the same thing. Does the provider have an approval letter? Yes. Okay, I'll put no, and we'll show you, so I can show you what happens. Is the provider accredited? I'll just put no here too. Okay. If they say no, no, and they go to the next page, it gives them a reason they cannot go on. Okay, tells exactly why. They can go back and change that, or they can decide, well, it must be done. Okay. If they hit yes, then they can upload that letter. Okay, they'll get a little screen like this, and then they can upload just about any type of file. You know, obviously it's probably going to be a Word, a PDF, or text file. Most likely it's going to be a PDF, and they hit that upload. Okay, we save that in the cloud, so to speak. And this button here, I didn't pick a really big document, so it's hard to tell, will actually have the document file name embedded in that button. So this button may grow out to be, could be out this far or whatever, because it depends on how long their file name is. Then over here, I'm going to hit yes again. And this is a provider accredited by an agency recognized by USDOE. And then it lets them select that agency. Okay. This list came off of some website. I'm not exactly sure where that came from. Okay. So those two questions would have to be answered positively, and we can go forward. That gets them to that sign up page. Don't worry about the sign up page yet, but it's going to be, it's going to give them information on how to get their personal ID to be able to continue all the process. Okay, so that's the pre-screening. Let me go back. We're going to go back in, and this is how you can do this. So, okay, that was an interesting path, right? So let's take this again. So you just go back on your thing to page 1. You can type in a different, it's being really stupid. So, because I'm running out of brain power, FEIN, you just put in, hopefully, you won't hit one that's already in our system, which I don't think you will. There's not much in UAT. And then you can put that fakemail.com will get you, so you don't have to go through you don't have to get emails sent to yourself. And by doing that, see, it says you're going to bypass it. Obviously, that's not going to be a production thing. We just got that set up for you in UAT. All right. So I'm coming in here again. We're going to take a different path. Okay. We're going to put in a description, and then we're going to take this path here. Okay. It's National Apprenticeship Act. So basically a registered apprenticeship program. We're going to do public next. This time we're going to do, we're out of state. Okay. If we're out of state, there's 3 additional questions. Okay. The first one says, is the entity listed on the state ETPL in which they're headquartered? Okay. And we can select that state. They can type in something that's close by, maybe. And then does the provider have proof that it's authorized to operate in the chosen state? To that question, and I can add that proof. So I go in here, and there's a Word document. I'll just do that, upload that. And then the last question, does the provider have evidence that it doesn't offer any instruction or core academic support services, admission, evaluation, registration, any of those things, or operate a facility in Illinois? We say yes, and we upload that. Obviously, the system's not going to say, is that a valid document, and search through that. It doesn't have that capability. It just knows if they've uploaded a document. That's going to be the person that reviews all that is going to have to kind of look through that. Okay, we come to that final screen, and this is on the registered apprenticeship program. There is a expansion, an area of information here that you can expand that tells them more about what does it tell them about? Okay, so related training instruction providers headquartered or having ACT classes in Illinois must be approved by the appropriate entities to operate. It talks about those based upon different types of programs, truck driving, cosmetology, licensed practice nurse, those kinds of things. So that question leads to that information leads to this question down here. We're going to start here. Does a provider wish to opt in? Opt in form, and then you'll pick that up. Obviously, they're not going to upload the same stuff. And then down here, does the RTI provider have documentation issued by the appropriate state education agencies listed above? And then I'm going to say, if yes, then I'm going to upload a file for that. Okay, now, if they don't upload a file, they can't go on. So there's a question out here. Mark, what's your statement here? It looks like you saw something probably here.
Yeah, Crystal was just asking with regard to the description program or provider description, if they've got, dozens or more courses, how they would put those all in there. And I think we just need to be clear, maybe in an info bubble, what it is we expect there.
Okay,
Because
yeah, we're
they-
going to add
yeah.
an info button there. And we talked about that. We just got to figure out what that is. Yep, very good question. Because that's a little bit confusing. It's like I got multiple programs, but this is describing me as a provider and my accreditation and all those kind of things, not the actual program. All right, let's go through the final one. Actually, we'll go through the final one. There's a couple routes in that final one, and we're going to go through that. So, I know this is garbage, but we'll go through and we'll do a rapids, and we'll do something there. CBO user add. Okay. Hit the continue. All right, so okay, we're gonna go down here. Now, we're gonna first hit this, and one of these two will hit this time through, and then we'll come back and hit this one. So we'll say it's a CBO, a private nonprofit. So your choices here are private nonprofit, private for-profit, and a public provider. So we'll take the private nonprofit. We'll also say we're community-based. We'll say we're in state because I don't want to upload those documents. Now, this one here, when you're in this community-based, has one of these expansions areas here. This will be removed shortly. It's in test, but this is very similar to the other one. Does this provider have documentation issued by the appropriate state education agencies listed above? One of these. Yes, we can upload that document. Then we have 4 answers on this next one. Is the provider approved to operate in Illinois under the Private Business and Vocational Schools Act? And then that's yes, they're approved, and add that, or they have a delay letter, or they have an exemption letter. Obviously, if you hit this one, it's not going to allow you to go on. So we'll just say they have an exemption letter just for fun. All right, now we're going to go back and we're going to do the public one, and you'll have a different set of questions there. Right. All right, so we're gonna pick this. We're gonna pick public. And we're gonna go all the way down here because we're gonna get these other questions. Okay, provider of adult education literacy. Is a provider of adult education provider funded through the Illinois Community College Board? And does the provider have a program or programs that are part of the integrated career and academic preparation system ICAPS? Okay, I'm going to do that. I didn't put in the description. See there, that's what it looks like if you don't do that. We can have better test data than that, sorry. Okay, we're going to do in-state because we don't want to do the. All right, so you get the same set of expansion, but this is not, I don't think this is right, Laura? This should not be here now because I picked public. Is that right, Laura?
Correct. If it's public, that should not be there.
Yeah, this has got to be changed. I thought we had that fixed. All right, I didn't catch it, but that would not be there because it's public. And we'll have to get that fixed. Thought I had it fixed yesterday. Okay, that's the only last piece. All right. Questions? I'm sure this was pretty fast. When you get to plan with it, you might have some questions. Pre-screening process, our local ETPL policy requires additional information from training providers besides PVCS and ICP certifications such as refund policy. That's in the training program itself. The refund policy and drop dates are in our training program definition.
Correct. They're on.
So yeah, so when you get to that training program definition, they'll be settable in there. Okay. Rory, when we first discussed provider info entry, you were introduced to the type, but to make sure if the entity prospective provider isn't sure of one of the questions. Yeah, well, we can't give, so here's the deal. If you notice through here, we haven't collected a location yet. We haven't collected a zip code or anything else, so we cannot actually point them to a specific LWIA. That's
right. I just realized that.
Yes.
after we
Now-
get through the pre-screening process and they create once they create their entity record, their provider record, from that point on, we can definitely direct them to an LWIA.
When we create the landing page, we will have something similar to IWDS now, where they put in the zip code and it comes up with their coordinator information. On our new landing page, we will be able to link to the LWAC system. And so that's why we had the local ETPL coordinators be listed in LWACs. That way it's always up to date and everyone you'll never have to worry about changing that as long as you keep it updated in LWACs. And it should direct them to the person that they need to be. So we have a landing page in development, and it said, for questions, you can contact your local ETPL coordinator, and then it provides them with a list.
Yeah, sorry. I think this is sounding more familiar, like deja vu here. I do think we talked about this way back when you guys were kind of introducing this, and I think I just wanted to be sure. Like, yeah, I think there is they'll still kind of currently like how it is, where they can put a zip code in and it would connect them if they did have questions, even if ultimately they have to go through like a state level, provider screening or provider approval. At least it gets them in contact with someone they could ask questions. Because if a lot of these questions are and sorry, I'm paying more attention to your instructions, the walking through, which is very helpful. But I'm in not paying attention to if there's red asterisks with each and every question. So I think if there are, that was my question. Like, will they get held up like if it's a required field, are they able to like, you know, skip certain things if they're not sure, or if they know for sure they don't have a certain type of documentation or certain type of verification of, you know, where they can operate and all that stuff. Are
They
they able
can-
to ever skip?
Lori, they
I mean,
can
obviously these that you're showing right now are kind of like, these
They
have to
don't,
be in
obviously,
there.
they don't have to,
But if they're like required
record, whatever
fields
they
that they
do
don't
is there.
know, will they be, will it say like, sorry, you can't complete, you know, we can't move forward because this is a required field? Or would they be able to submit something with with certain, you know, any fields incomplete, I guess?
Yes, well, so here's the deal. They cannot submit that and be through this pre-screening process, but that data we save, and they could go back in there multiple times until they get through that successfully.
Oh,
Okay.
good. Okay.
So like, and that's important. I know what you're saying. So not that there's a lot of questions here. I could do, as you see, I completed that how many times now, um, but when you get to these, you know, obviously this has to be, you know, if they went here, right? Uh, like I showed you before, if they don't answer this, they can't even get to the next page or whatever. But if they put a description in, and then they selected this, for example, it goes to here and says, you know what, this is not acceptable. And we're gonna, you know, we'll have that email capability here too. But they're saying, oh, they have a previous button, right? And if they can, and even if they left either here, say they left here, they said, okay, I'll come back later, right? Then when they come back, it'll take them to this page here. So when they come back, it takes them to this page. And if they had that fill, it would actually show them that they had that filled out, but they could change it when they came back. So every step in this, pretty much every step in this is positively required, like not just required to answer, but you have to be answering it positively, right? You can't say, no, I don't have it. No, I'm not going to do it, and get through the pre-screening process. We'll have lots of ways you can get help, but we're not saying, oh, I'm just going to bail out of this. Okay. Hope that helps. But whatever you do, not that it's a lot of data, right? You're just picking a few check boxes, but whatever you do. But if you get to one of these points, here's a good example. If I get to one of these points, it's like, okay, I'm ready to roll. And I get to this next one, and let's just say I'm still going on. That's easy. And I get to here, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I need to find this, right? Well, just because, you know, they can come back if they want to, they can leave it and come back and then get to this point again and add it, right? So they may, but we're going to have a lot of instructions on that beforehand in that landing page, like Laura said, and also give them that ability to get help, so to speak. Any other questions? Good questions, Rory. Appreciate it.
If nobody else has questions, we do still have some career plan goals and objectives we need to go through before time. So we will switch gears. So last call for any questions before we send you all off to conduct UAT and really walk through this yourselves. All right, with that, I'll go ahead and take the screen share over and take things over if you are good on your end.
Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to be switching up gears here a little bit. I need to get your guys' feedback on some of the goals and objectives items that we have been working on. We're still working on fleshing out the preset list. So what you might see on the screen, they're not our final ones yet. We're still working through a lot of that. We got those all in front of you all and need to get them in front of some of our performance people to make sure that what we're collecting in those we can use later down the road to help us with performance and tracking. One of the things we do have hooked up, we're still doing a lot of work on this. This is not ready for UAT. We're not asking you to go in and test this yet. We had originally started with this having a add goals button that opens a modal that allows us to add our goal. And then we have one for add objectives that allows us to go in and add an objective for our goal. And then you can, do it again to add more objectives. We would like to move to a more unified modal that will streamline the process of adding goals and objectives by having it be one unified modal. So on our previous page we were on, we would have like an add goals and objective button that would open up a modal that first, similar to our goals, we would start by, when we're adding, we'd first start by adding the goal. We'd pick the type and then we'd pick the goal. Once we know all that, we would then show all the additional data fields that go with adding the goal. So you can add all that. And then right underneath it, we would have the ability to also add an objective as part of that goal as well. So you're not having to save that, click another button to add the objective. You're kind of doing it more as one step. It would auto populate the goal you had just added above to say you're adding an objective for whatever it was, and then you could pick from the presets or add your own, use the other option. And then if you want to add more objectives, you click add another objective button, and it would simply like open up another objective section where you could then keep working. This is just an example of like them filled out, and you could add as many objectives as you needed and then save and close, and it would add the goal and objectives all in one step. And then if you needed to edit, so you're on your table screen, and we need to talk about some of the UI here too. That's the other piece I have. But you're on your table screen and you click edit next to one of these. It would open up that full modal. And if you clicked it to goal, you would already be right there at the top. But say you would click the edit button next to the second objective, it would jump you down to that section so you can edit it. Again, you could edit everything, make several edits on this page and save them all. But I'd try to like get you as close to where it thinks you're trying to edit as possible. Um, we would like to move to like start to combine those. We're really reusing all of the back end. We're just going to retool the UI a little bit to make this a little more streamlined, but wanted to get it in front of you all to get your feedback on that before we put that in the sprint that we would kick off tomorrow. So I'm going to open things up. I see in the chat, I like the combined. The print is on the summary page. So that is, we have the ability to print that. Sorry, let me find my tab right here. So we have a signature summary page where we can print out the career plan and it's going to print in a more visual view. We had reviewed that as Discovery a while back too and just got sign off from the state. So we're going to start getting some screens on the print stuff. Yes, so we would be able to delete. So say you accidentally added one and it, you never started it, never engaged with it, you could come in and delete it, the objective. Once you start tying data to the objective, you need to move to using our discontinued option. Because if you'd started it, it might no longer be relevant or they might not have successfully completed it, but we still want to keep it on there to show, it was engaged with and have it discontinued as something we're no longer using. Do we have anybody who has concerns about moving to a more unified modal to streamline the process? If not, I'm going to take silence as folks are on board with trying to streamline this a little more. We're really aiming to minimize your number of clicks and navigation to be able to build your career plans with this enhancement. I'll go back to that screen if I can find it. All right. Perfect. The other question I had for you all is we had talked about this originally when we were looking at the discovery of this screen of what columns you'd want to see in the data table. And I had mentioned they might not all fit. Turns out they don't all fit. We have to scroll, which we don't really like. So we would like to figure out with you all what we could do away with so that this is a little cleaner. We need to keep actions. It's going to be locked in there to allow you guys to edit and delete these easily. But we also were looking at, we can like uncheck these so I can kind of show you guys what it would look like, and we can make these a little smaller so it all fits. But thoughts from you guys on what you would like to see as defaults to make this a little cleaner. We can get about 4 to 5 items on here. Yeah, so right now it has all these checked. It has type, name, status, actual start date, planned end date, actual end date. Actions has to stay on. I'm going to talk to this. We might be able to integrate the actions a different way. And if we are, we might be able to get one more on. But we really need to know from these right here, which 2 are you guys okay with removing? And you're just removing as default. They're gonna stay in here for you guys to be able to select, and we're adding the additional items like your term, programs associated. So you can add more and like scroll to see everything. But when we default land on the page, we don't want to start with it being a scrollable page. So we want to know what you would like to see as a default when you land on here at a glance, with the ability to expand it based on what you're needing to do with the customer. And I can show, you can tell me kind of what you're wanting to see, and we can kind of like look at it here, like in, in real time, what it looks like. Actual end date being 1 to go is a comment I got in the chat. If I can get some folks either giving me some thumbs up on that comment, if everybody's good with it, or if folks have concerns about that, let me know in the chat. You guys are thinking planned and actual end date could go, and we would keep type, type, name, status, and actual start date. Okay. Perfect. Type. I'm making a note here and I'll get this updated. So, all right. Dan, you have your hand up.
So this is just maybe a ridiculous request or whatever, but is it at all possible that start date and end date would be in the same column? However, there would be a bubble, and if it's a planned, then it would, I don't know, somehow like maybe in italics be there, or would that just be too confusing to everyone? I don't know. I just throw it out there. If that makes sense in what I'm trying to say. So like there would just be in a start date column and an end date column. And then depending on if it's actual or planned, it would just be represented in a different format that would, once people are used to that, they would be, oh yeah, or would that just be too confusing?
So one thing I'm going to add on to that is we could like have, start date and even put planned : this date, actual : that date. And if they don't have an actual, because sometimes they might not, it would have NA. One of the abilities you would lose is the ability to sort on dates, because you're having multiple dates in there. Or we would have to choose, like, you have to sort, but it's always going to sort on, the actual or the planned.
I'll just throw it out there. I'll defer to
Yeah.
everybody else though.
We have somebody say they like it all in one column. Any other thoughts on that? Before we make a big change like that, I need more local buy-in. before we go and change it up from our standard formatting.
Weren't you going to default these to the most recent one on top? So it would be good to know.
The most
able to sort?
recently edited one, yeah. So whenever I make a change, like if I come in and edit this goal, then my sorting is going to change to whatever I most recently edited will be on the top of the list. And if we do move to all one column, I need you guys to let me know how you want that sort feature to work. What do I sort on then? If I try to sort on start date, am I sorting on the planned start date, the actual start date? And what are we going to give away the ability to sort on? Sort on actual. All right. I do have 3, 4 people in here. I'm glad to get some, but if some more folks can, if everybody can tell me in the chat if you agree or disagree, that would be very helpful. If you agree one column, or if you prefer the 2 columns, and if you do agree one column, making sure you're okay with moving to actual start date as sorting, and we wouldn't have the ability to sort on planned start date. Actual start date. Agree. Okay. Seeing lots of people liking that idea, Dan. One column with it sorting on actual start date. So we would see something like, give you guys a visual here. Start date. And then it would be something like planned 4/1/2025. Then give me just a second as I try to. That's not what I want. And then right under that would be, see if it'll wrap for me. Actual. So it would show like that. And then when I filter, it's gonna filter based on the actual. So if I'm filtering on, the most recent, it would filter this one above all these others, because 4/15, it would go 4/15, then, whatever. The 4/8 and the 4/1s, if those were all the actual start dates.
Sorry, one other thing.
Yeah.
If there is an actual date, does it make sense that the planned date, whether end or start, is just masked and doesn't show unless you dig into that specific activity?
I'm not sure I'm following what you're saying.
So in this example, that first one for employment, let's just pretend we haven't gotten to the actual yet. And so the case manager has just put in the planned. And so it shows planned like that. I don't know how, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm just terrible at this. But once an actual start date or end date is entered, then it wouldn't show up with 2 lines. It would just show up as whichever one that is, I'm sorry. Once an actual has been entered, then the actual would show up and the plan would no longer show up on this summary screen. You could still see it potentially when you went into the details. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, I will have to talk to the devs about that kind of logic embedded into the table. I don't know, Al, if you know off the top of your heads, if we can do that pretty easily to where it's start date and we override one or the other. So I'm assuming if we would still need to keep planned or actual so folks know. And then I'm trying to think how the filtering will work.
Yeah.
If there's different kinds of dates and stuff, we would just filter. I
I
don't know,
think
it's
you
getting
could do
kind of
like
complex in there.
if the actual field is null, then you could say then show planned
Yeah, we can
date
do that.
and vice versa. You know what I mean? It would only be the one or the other, right? And please share my apologies to the Debs.
No, you can do that. We can do that easy.
And then we would just say planned or actual so they know when they're looking at the start date, which one I'm looking at. And we'd train that if there is an actual, if there's no actual, it's because we don't have an actual. We only have a planned. And if we do have an actual, it'll supersede the planned.
Yep.
And then can we sort? Do you know, can we sort
Yes.
on both dates? So it just shows
Mm.
them in order regardless of if it's planned and actual.
Yeah, because they're gonna peel those off.
There's only one.
Yeah, they're gonna
Okay.
peel those off and load them into that table. And so then because there's only gonna be one day
Yeah.
in a table, so the table will sort by the date, regardless of which one they peeled in and put in there.
Yeah. Okay. And then that way in the column, you're getting both planned and actual. We can do the same thing for end date.
Dara, can I jump in one more time?
Yeah.
And I'm throwing this out there as a suggestion as well. Planned is planned, right? And people always need to know that. But I think that there's potentially an assumption that once there's a date there, that is a real date. So I wonder if we're doing the filtering, could it be in that first line example again? It shows the start date 4/1/2025, and then in parentheses, because it's planned, it says planned. Once an actual is actually entered, it just shows the date. Because at least that's where my mind goes as, wait, oh yeah, this is just planned in parentheses. And then once there's a real date in there, then yeah, that's a real thing. Again, I'll let everybody else chime in or is all of this just too damn confusing and just be easier with columns? Sorry. Done.
I think you're thinking in a very intuitive way, Dan, and I like that. I just want to make sure because I don't have the expertise you all do of knowing how your field staff, if that they're like they'll catch on to that. That makes complete sense. The system can definitely accommodate that. So we'd kind of show like I can kind of fake it to make it look like what you're talking about. And then this one would just be because it's the actual date. So like these would be our actual dates, and if they were planned and there was no actual, it would just show this with planned next to it.
That's what I was thinking. But again, please, other people jump in.
I know we're just about at time, so if folks can go ahead and type your thoughts into the chat or come off mute, we can definitely get this wrapped in and when we go to update the columns. Perfect. I like that. I like the date just being the date. Fantastic. Making some notes here. Once a goal is started, is there any need for us to know what the planned date was? I can't think of any, so I like Dan's idea. Looks good. Awesome. And
It's
then,
still going to be available though, right? Because like from,
yeah.
okay.
So
Yeah.
I would click edit and I would jump back in them. It would take me to that modal and I would still see what all the sorry, I have it really small over here. I would still see all the dates that were entered. These are all are just planned, but I would see like what they were and then the actual date. So we'll never lose that data. We just won't have it on the table.
But if a user doesn't mind scrolling, then they can drop down that hamburger and add more columns. Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, so we were gonna move to just having start date and end date, and then go into edit to see the planned versus actual
Okay.
start and end.
Okay.
Is that the only way we can see the details on these records? Is it be in edit mode?
Or we can go to the summary, which shows the details in a paragraph.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And we're gonna have the hamburger is gonna be expanded to include, this was just the preset. Like I said, we're still working on all this. The hamburger is gonna be expanded to include all the other items that we don't currently have that are part of this. I believe it would be helpful to show what date was entered along with reflecting planned or actual, again, actually superseding the plan. So are you saying that we would have planned or actual in parens? Is that what you're saying, or you're saying that the actual would just supersede and we would know?
Hi. No, I think that it's helpful that it wouldn't be in the parentheses, that it would
Okay.
just say planned or actual. And again, the actual would supersede if both dates were entered.
But it would say actual, so it would like
Right.
clear to
It
the
would
end
say
user.
actual or it would say planned. Right. Correct.
Okay, so I have a little bit of a split there. If I can get like a final consensus on, are we wanting it to actually to say planned or actual to be very clear, or only say planned and assume actual if nothing is there? I have a split here because everybody was saying it looks good this way, and then I have a comment with some thumbs up for having actual be a part of that. If everybody could go ahead and type in the chat, like show actual or assume actual for what you prefer. All right, the shows look like they're what we're seeing now. So we'll start that way. You know, when we get things into UAT, we can always adjust. I'll go ahead and keep typing. I'll get the final count after everybody types in, and use that to make the updates. And that is all we have for you guys today. I really appreciate you. I know we're a few minutes late, but I really appreciate you staying on so we could talk through some of these development changes we're wanting to make as we're working through some of this, so that we can keep this work going. I'm very excited to get this in front of you guys in UAT. We still do have a pretty good chunk of development work to do over the next, I would say, 2 or 3 sprints before it will be UAT ready, but it won't be long before we'll be able to get you in, get your hands on some of this career plan stuff. So thanks again for your time, and we will plan on meeting with you guys again in a week or 2. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.